Good afternoon, namaste from Bharat. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and distinguished participants. This is Satya Pulkuri, the Associate Editor of the Indic Researchers Forum, and also the host for the conference. Indic Researchers Forum is an independent think tank that promotes quality research on geopolitics and security studies through a civilizational perspective. As we gather today for the Countering Islamic Jihad, a collaborative approach conference, we stand united in our commitments to addressing one of the most challenging and pressing issues of our time. The realm of global security has been deeply impacted by the complex phenomenon of Islamic Jihad, a topic that carries profound implications for the current world order and intersects significantly with socio-political. At the heart of our discussion is the understanding that jihadism, under the banners of defending Islam, often opposes cultural, political, or military threats. Today, we also remember a particularly heinous manifestation of such jihadism, the tragic 2611 attacks. This dark day in the history serves as a somber reminder of the catastrophic consequences of unchecked radical ideologies and the urgent need for effective counterterrorism strategies. Our conference aims to provide a platform for meaningful dialogue and collaboration among nations, researchers, policymakers, and practitioners. We seek to deepen our understanding of the multifaceted nature of Islamic Jihad. Through this conference, we aspire to contribute to the fortifications of international security initiatives, ensuring that such tragic events as the 2611 attacks never occur again. In addition to recalling the horrific 2611 attacks, we also must acknowledge the recent October 7th Hamas attack. On this note, it is my great honor to introduce the session chair for the inaugural session, Commodore Professor Srikant Deshmukh, a distinguished veteran of the Indian Navy. Commodore Deshmukh has served our nation with distinction of 32 years, bringing with him a wealth of experience and expertise in both marine and aviation sector. His education journey is an imperative as a service, holding bachelor's in mechanical engineering, an MSc in defense science and PGDM, where he was a gold medalist. Commodore Deshmukh's career in the Navy is marked by his specialization in the maintenance of fighter aircrafts and anti-submarine warfare helicopters. He has served on board various ships and aircraft carriers, holding critical operational and administrative appointments, including Principal Director at Naval Headquarters and Commodore Superintendent, Naval Aircraft Yard. Post-retirement, Commodore Deshmukh continued to contribute significantly to the defense sector, working with the Tata Group and later with the Sun Group's Aerospace and Defense Vertical as Senior Vice President. His current endeavors in Pune involving guiding SMEs in regional projects under the Atmanirbhar Bharat project policy in collaboration with OEMs. His passion for education has led him to work with Manipal Institute of Technology and Manipal Academy for Higher Learning as the adjunct faculty. A prolific writer, his insights on defense, technical, and geopolitical matters have been widely published and recognized. He is also a life member of Aeronautical Society of India. Sir currently is also the member of the Senior Advisory Board member of IRF. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you so very much, Satya, for this introductory remarks. It's my honor and pleasure to chair this session. His Excellency, Ambassador Gilon, Major General G.D. Bakshi, SM, VSM, retired, Mr. Yashash Arya, General Kocha, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to compliment Indic Researchers Forum for organizing this webinar on a topic of global importance. I would also like to thank the forum for giving me this opportunity to chair the opening session. Indeed an honor for me. I must admit that it is a bit overwhelming to chair a session graced by eminent personalities like Ambassador Gilon and General Bakshi, experts on the subject. However, I take this an opportunity for me as a learning opportunity. If we would like to think of a single word which strikes unease world over, it would be terrorism. Terrorism comes in many forms and shades, and many countries have suffered from it, especially Israel and India. Of all its forms, the religious terrorism is the most perilous. Fundamentally, no religion is expected to advocate violence or extremism. So, from where the religious terrorism emanates is a matter of deeper research and concern. Though religious extremism is a globally debated issue, it gets reduced to an unidimensional view of this particular phenomena. In reality, term extremism has failed to capture the multiple dimensions of this particular word. Therefore, it is an express need to examine multi dimensions of the religious extremism, bringing together different interpretations, beliefs, and the real meaning of the term religious identity. It is in this context I consider this webinar as a right step in that direction. We need to understand and appreciate that religious extremism can be communal, genocidal, nihilistic, or revolutionary. It can be committed by the lone wolves, clandestine cells, large decent movements, or unfortunately, the government sponsored and funded groups. Such government sponsored and the funded terrorism can be extremely dangerous and catastrophic. Both India and Israel have seen this particular phenomena impacting them very badly. It is really sad that the world today fails to unite against such sponsored terrorists and condemn them, thereby further encouraging and emboldening them. Many countries fail to appreciate that taking a sympathetic view of such groups under the garb of human rights and humanitarian considerations may fall prey to the same groups tomorrow. It's a alarming bell for all of us. It's a matter of fact that the countries who had welcomed the refugees and had strived to make them part of the mainstream have been failed by those refugees. These refugees feel that the governmental aid, facilities, medical and housing assistance is their right and do not hesitate to resort to violence to claim them. On other perspective, the well-organized groups which are funded and armed go ahead with advertising their extremist views as a gospel truth and justify the violence and the barbarism perpetrated by them. Again, people in India and Israel would understand this phenomena much better. It is fundamentally wrong to advocate or presume that any your religious tenets are right and all other religions are trash, or all people who follow those other religions are kafirs. It does not sound right when it is proclaimed that one religious faction has a right to destroy all other religions and that only their religious laws are supreme and other judicial systems are garbage. Thus, only their law must be imposed on everyone else. The current religious extremism arises from such misplaced conceptions. It is dichotomic to see that these groups, which want to enjoy all the fruits of the democracy, liberalization, and the democratic judicial systems, want to enforce their own laws on others. Time seems to have come now for the world to consider this aspect and act judicially on it. It is difficult to appreciate a religious community, or a group which perpetrates hatred, indoctrinates young minds and women, and uses them as shields to profess their violence. Further, it is also difficult to appreciate some governments, countries coming together under the name of religion to support the violence and the barbarism acts of these groups just because they belong to the same religion, a point which needs to be noted. It is also bewildering to see that such countries collectively blame and demean the elected governments for taking actions for protecting their country, their citizens, and their democracies. Again, India and Israel would understand this particular point much better. It is also alarming to see that the jihadis do have ample funds available to them to arm themselves with the modern weapons and the technologies to inflict much more severe damage on other countries. I'm afraid that the technologies like artificial intelligence, deepfake technologies would be used by such jihadis to spread false propaganda, to influence more young minds, women, and other people from that religion, thereby spreading more hatred and extremism. One can continue speaking on this particular topic for hours, but I understand the time limitations. And further, I also would not like to steal the thunder from the eminent and the knowledgeable speakers like Ambassador Gilon and General Bakshi. I am confident that this opening session would set a right tone for other sessions of this webinar. I hope the deliberation in this webinar would go a long way in better understanding of jihad and recommending appropriate measures to stem this rising religious fundamentalism and jihad. My very best wishes. Now, I would like to invite His Excellency Ambassador Gilon to enlighten us on the current happening. It's my honor to introduce His Excellency the Ambassador. Ambassador Gilon is currently serving as Israel's ambassador to Republic of Bharat. He graduated from Tel Aviv University and holds a master's degree on international relations from Cornell University in Budapest. He rose to the ranks of Israel Diplomatic Corps and for over 30 years has played a very key role in representing the state of Israel. His vast experience includes a role of foreign policy advisor to three prime ministers. He also serves as the deputy chief of mission at the Embassy of Israel in Hungary, counselor for political affairs at the Permanent Mission United Nations, head of the Division for Strategic and Military Affairs as Center for Policy Research, and the Minister Counselor for Political Affairs as Embassy of Israel in Washington. We are extremely honored to have you, sir, as Ambassador of Israel in our country. It's my honor now to request you to kindly enlighten us with your views on the topic today. Thank you so very much, sir. Welcome to the webinar. All the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor, for your wise words. I cannot say that I'm an expert in the field. I'm a practitioner like many of us, and I think that I would like to thank, first of all, the Indic Research Forum. One could not find a better time probably to have such a webinar, such a discussion. It's a combination, of course, of 2611 coming soon and 40 days, 15 years to 2611 and 40 days since the 7/10 attack on Israel. And I would add to this trio, I will make it a trio by probably adding 9/11, because I think that these were watershed events to each one of the countries in the world to understand the Islamic Jihad and its influence on our lives. When you look at, I will concentrate naturally a lot on 7 October, 40 days ago. And the main people ask, what happened to Israel? This country is very strong and everything, and intelligence services. I would say that, it's still time to look into it. But the clear thing in my eyes is that we had a concept, and the misconcept was that you can contain jihadists. We thought that with dual containment, we can hold Hamas by deterrence on the one hand, and on improving the life of the citizens of Gaza on the other hand, because about 30,000 were coming into Israel. We allowed Qatari money to go in. We allowed the merchandise to go in. And we thought that Hamas, as the leader of Gaza, will have some responsibility towards his population. But this was a huge mistake, because we didn't understand that the jihadist ideology is the one that reigns. All the rest is nice to have if they can be be a little bit more pragmatic implementation of things. So in short, I would say that on the 6th of October, Friday evening, we went to sleep thinking we have Hamas as our neighbor, and Saturday morning we woke up with ISIS on our border. That's the big change, I think, that happened in Israel. And you look at what they did on October 7th, you understand that it's cruelty, the rape, the decapitation, having body cams. Most of the evidence we get is from their body cams. They photoed what they did intentionally, hijacking people, doing now psychological warfare, trying to intimidate the population. I mean, you go back to 26/11, it's exactly the same thing, I believe, the same idea and what they want to achieve. And I believe that we are in a very critical period in the sense that for a while after the campaign of the US and the international coalition, there was the feeling that Islamic jihadism, terrorism is a little bit down, controlled, tamed in a way. Of course, we all understand that it's in the minds and hearts of people, so you cannot make it go away in any way, but the organizational part of it was decapitated in a way or weakened. Their means, the money, everything was a little bit weakened. And one of the biggest problems that can happen now is that if there will be a picture of victory of Hamas, a small organization against the army that is considered the strongest in the region and beyond, very strong also beyond the region, this might give a backwind or ripple effect, whichever you want to call it, to those sleeping cells or entities or people that are all around the world, including South Asia, including a lot in Europe, a lot in North America, and this can be very, very dangerous, and to different kinds of terrorism that can happen. It's also endangering the pragmatic regimes in our region. Of course, the Muslim Brotherhood idea in general is their enemy. It's the enemy's opposition of Egypt, who tried to topple or to make a regime change, to the Gulf countries. I think that's very clear to everyone, and also influences the way they look at this crisis. Of course, they have to balance between public opinion, internal public opinion, which is on the one hand, and their probably strategic interest on the other hand, not to see victory to the jihadists and to the Muslim Brotherhood. I believe that what we can see here is that Iran is the head of the snake in this sense. Iran has 4 military outlets, wings, whichever arms in the region. The flesh and blood of Iran is, of course, Hezbollah in the north, Shiites. Nasrallah, the leader, speaks himself as a soldier in the Revolutionary Guards, the strongest. Then you have Hamas, which are Sunnis, of course, but very close to Iran. All 4, by the way, are equipped, trained, and financed by Iran. And then you go down to the Houthis in Yemen, Shiites again, and you go to the militias, Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria. And all 4 are engaging with Israel now, trying to create a situation where Israel will be deterred from completing the mission of eliminating as much as possible the capacities and the leadership of Hamas, which is very, very important that you achieve it, because any other picture, as I said, will be very problematic. The Americans were very fast on their feet to understand the situation. They sent already the first carrier to the region very, very fast. The next day, I think it was even. And that was very, very important. Together with the deterrence of Israel, I think we for the time being, I hope it will continue, we contain the possibility of enlargement of the escalation. Of course, we are in de facto war by proxy with Iran, not to be mistaken. Hezbollah is fighting Israel. It's like, as I said, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, everyone is engaging Israel, but we are trying to, at the same time, to focus on taking care of Hamas, what we have to do. And then if someone else wants to, or meanwhile, someone wants to challenge us, it will be also, I think, eventually, Iran, instead of losing one arm that it invested a lot of money into, might lose much more, and I hope that the Iranians also understand that. Although we have to say Hezbollah has the ability to inflict quite a lot of pain on Israel, but what we can do to Hezbollah in Lebanon is 10 times greater, I believe, and this is probably still there in the air of everyone. You know, in the past, Al Jazeera was probably the main known, especially Al Jazeera Arabic, but not only, poisoning of the minds of the people, the main tool. Today, unfortunately, and I think the professor also alluded to that, we have the social media. Social media is a wonderful tool for such people, fake news, incitement, everything is there. You add to that phenomena in the world of extreme liberalism, misled liberalism, in the sense of uninformed liberalism. So, you know, when I see, as an Israeli, I see myself as a liberal Israeli Jew, most Jews are liberals, by the way. Liberals does not mean we believe in human rights, we believe in equality. It doesn't mean that we are soft, not to mistaken the softness of other Western powers. We are not soft. I mean, we are all hardliners when it comes to defending ourselves, and liberal when it comes to how we want to conduct our lives. And when I see gays for Palestine or different misguided groups like that, when gays in Palestine, the only thing they can do is be thrown off rooftops or escape to Israel in order not to be executed. This is the reality we have to deal with, a lot of misinformed and disinformed people. I would continue maybe towards the end and say one thing. I will use high treason, we say in Israel. I will quote Prime Minister Modi. I think it's very relevant what he said about terrorism, that it's an enemy of humanity, and there can be no if or but in dealing with it. Jumping a little bit, we must come together to fight this menace. And I think that we all understand that, and Prime Minister Modi was also true to his commitment and was among the first leaders in the world, 7 October afternoon, already to condemn unequivocally this attack without giving any context that can maybe explain why you rape and murder kids and decapitate people and hijack and whatnot. I believe that also probably in general, of course, there are different views. The Indian public is probably the biggest supporter in the world. I would think in numbers, in a percentage, probably the highest support you will get, because and India comes from the point of view of experience. You suffer terrorism, you fight terrorism. So I think in this sense, it's an educated support by many. It's not only a blind support or against in this case. So I think it's very, very important what we get here. I would finish by the last point that I think it's exactly the good time for India to designate Hamas as a terror organization also in India. It's acknowledged already in about 40 countries, democracies, all the European Union, US, Canada, Australia, UK. So I think it's the right time, and also to prevent phenomena like we see that Khalid Mashal can appear online in Kerala and call the people for jihad on Israel. But if you prepare for jihad, I think no one wants to have his citizens be prepared for jihad, in the state of mind of jihad. Call them to go out to the streets and the circles and the corners to demonstrate. I don't think someone wants that either. And calling them to finance, and this is terror financing, finance the resistance. The resistance, of course, they call it resistance. We probably in this forum would call it Islamic Jihad or fundamentalism or whatever. So I think I will conclude here. I will stay until the end of the session, but I apologize that I have a very, very busy schedule these days. But thank you very much for having this conference, extremely important. And thank you for inviting me, and such a huge, respectable team, group of speakers from both India and Israel. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for a very enlightening speech onto this very important topic. You really brought out one most important point, that one should not commit a mistake of thinking that the can be controlled or can be made to see realism. When you say those words, sir, I can assure you there is a lesson for India also to learn from them. You also brought out that any extremism or any efforts to curb the democracies or punish them for their own democracies need to be curbed so that the similar groups world over do not get emboldened and start perpetrating this hatred all over the world. It's really a time for all of us to learn a lesson from this 7th October event and be prepared to tackle this menace in a very effective manner. Ambassador, sir, as you also put it very rightly, that we two countries are united together for a long time. We are long-standing friends, but the effects of the terrorism have been witnessed by both our countries, and both our people can understand the damage which terrorism can cause to the fabric of our two nations. I think it's time that both of our nations should unite and unitedly fight this menace. Once again, I would like to thank you, Your Excellency, for your presence and the very illustrative views which you have expressed. May God bless us, sir. Thank you so very much. It's my honor now to invite General G.D. Bakshi, SM, VSM, retired. Before he would like to start his presentation, sir, it would be my honor to introduce you to the forum today. Major General Bakshi, SM, VSM retired, is a combat veteran of many skirmishes on the line of control and the counter-terrorism operations in Jammu and Kashmir and Punjab. He commanded his battalion in active operations in Kargil and was awarded Vishishta Seva Medal for his services. Later, he commanded a brigade in counter-terrorist operations in Keshwar and was awarded Sena Medal. He subsequently commanded the Romeo Force during intensive counter-terrorist operations in Rajouri and the Poonch districts of Jammu and Kashmir. He has served in highly prestigious Directorate General of Military Operations, both during the important operations like Op Pavan and Op Vijay. He is a very prolific writer on the military matters and the non-military matters as well, and has published 40 books and over 200 research papers in many prestigious research journals. He also taught at Indian Military Academy, Dehradun, and the prestigious Defence Services Staff College at Wellington for 3 years each. He was also a faculty in the National Defence College, New Delhi for 2 years and retired from that assignment. He holds a master's degree in defence science, MPhil in strategic studies, and his doctorate. I do not think we will find anybody more eminent to speak to us on this particular topic of jihad and enlighten us how to fight this particular menace in the coming days. I welcome you, sir, to start your presentation and enlighten us on the views. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much indeed for giving me this opportunity to take part in this very timely seminar. I am especially grateful to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Israel. We have shared experience, Your Excellency, in terms of the fact that for the last 30 years, India has been at the receiving end of jihadi terror. We have lost, very few people really realize this. The Indians have lost 80,000 citizens, military, non-military, in uniform, out of uniform, to the Pakistan-sponsored jihadi terrorism that has been relentlessly waged from the decade of the 1990s. And actually it started even earlier in Punjab, though it was not a jihadi form then, but Khalistani terror that it started with. And then Ziaul Haq morphed it into Operation Tofaq, and he waged an asymmetric war against India to bleed us with the war of 1,000 cuts. We lost about 40,000 people in in Jammu and Kashmir. We had lost about 18,000 in Punjab earlier, and in the Indian Mujahideen sponsored bombing attacks all over India, we've lost about 50,000 people. So in some, we've almost lost 80,000 citizens. That's not a small number. And therefore, we have a shared experience with Israel. We feel the pain of Israel because we share it. Both the Indic people and the Jewish people, the Hindus of India and the Jews of Israel have only one country. We can't afford to lose it. And therefore, India's reaction, very prompt reaction to the 7th October horrific massacre of our Jewish brothers and sisters, was immediate and so responsive, because it stems from an experience, a continuing experience of shared pain. I'm afraid the United States had their 9/11 and then, they have sort of moved on. And we find very woke attitudes there and rather this thing, but one is glad to see that they responded very firmly in the military terms by sending 2 aircraft carrier battle groups to head off further escalation. The point that I will be trying to assess in this opening session, in the last session, of course, we will be drawing lessons from what has happened in Israel to our Israeli comrades. There are pertinent lessons for everyone to learn there. But we must then understand the nature of the beast, the nature of jihadi terrorism. You see, and what I would like to point out is, what is the root of this jihadi angst, which periodically flares up into massacres all over the world, right? And the roots of this jihadi angst go back to the colonial period, when Islam lost its preeminence because they failed to keep pace technologically with the West. The West enslaved most of Asia, most of the Middle East, most of Africa. And that is the time that the Muslim Ummah started asking itself, where have we gone wrong? And surprisingly, they did not come to the conclusion that they have failed to keep pace technologically in educational terms, but they said that it is because they have lost the original purity, right? And because of that, they have gone down. Islam has suffered. It must be reinstated to its original purity. So in the Middle East and in the subcontinent, there were 2 movements for the resurgence of Islam. And one, of course, is the Deobandi movement in India. And then we have Hassan Banna and the Muslim Brotherhood that emerged in the Middle East. I'd leave my friends from Israel to talk more on the Middle East. I will focus on the subcontinental variety of jihadi terrorism. But, there is such a lot of commonality that there is very little to distinguish one from the other. In India, the one person, one ideologue of global Islamic Jihad, who's just been forgotten, he's not mentioned, is Abdul Allah Maududi. Let's not forget, this man wrote that book, Al-Jihad-e-Islam, right? And then he opposed the formation of Pakistan as a Muslim state because he felt that the Ummah is global. It cannot be confined within the boundaries of a nation state. It is transnational in its sweep, cannot be contained within the boundaries of a nation state. And you see, in this, there is a major threat to all nation states, not just India and Israel, but to every nation state in the world is challenged by this concept of a global borderless ummah. Please don't forget, the last ideology that refused to recognize international borders was communism. It posed a global threat to the world, right since the time the Tsars were overthrown. Lenin and Trotsky came in, and then, of course, we had Stalin, who almost single-handedly won the Second World War. And then they tried to spread communism all over the globe. The good thing was that communism retired hurt for the battle for the minds of men. In 1990, 1991, the Soviet Union had splintered into 15 states. And the USSR ceased to exist. It, without a shot being fired, there was an economic collapse. But communism has been replaced by this jihadi ummah's concept of global jihad. It now threatens the whole world, not just Israel and India. This is what I'm trying to state. And the rest of the world now has to collaborate. Hence the very timeliness of the theme of this seminar. Just like the world more or less united to combat the threat from ideological threat from communism, we must collaborate to now fight with, contain, and possibly destroy this threat that is emerging of a new globalized kind of a jihad phenomena, which is spreading all over. And my humble opinion is that, so many of the Islamic people have migrated to Europe. The demographic bomb is ticking in Europe. As the Ummah spreads there, we have seen that in reaction to the Hamas attack on Israel, the number of demonstrations that have been held in the Islamic states, in the Western states, that has to be seen to be believed, and you can all, point the back bearings back to the Islamic people who have migrated there initially as refugees, begging for asylum, and now demanding the Sharia. So as Europe, almost demographically, there is a ticking bomb inside Europe. And that can really give new contours to this global Islamic Jihad threat. That is my very humble submission, and I'm trying to point it out that we need to wake up and smell the coffee. This threat is not going away. This threat is going to magnify in the years ahead. It will morph and take new forms. Faces might change. The ideology of global jihad will remain constant. The simple fact is that theologically, this global jihad argument is seriously flawed. When I was commanding Romeo Force in Rajouri and Punch, engaged in very intensive counter-terrorist operations there against these jihadi tanzeems, especially the Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, and the rest, we carried out a kind of a seminar in which we called the ulema scholars. And the ulema scholars, especially the Shiite variety, told me that they contest this concept of the global ummah because the Lord of the Quran is not just the Lord of the Muslimin. He is the Lord of the Kainat, the whole cosmos. And how can you therefore say that it is only the Muslims, who constitute the ummah, and the Allah is confined to these? So there are these theological arguments which in our counter, propaganda themes, in our counter cyber warfare themes, we will have to be very, very cognizant of. But the simple fact is that it is Abdul Allah Maududi who in fact initially opposed the formation of an Islamic state in Pakistan. It is Muhammad Ali Jinnah and then Ayub, etc., who formalized a state, an Islamic state, as they put it, in Pakistan. The Islamic state, we must, in the historical context, understand how the global ummah, the global jihad argument gained such traction. It is the war in Afghanistan. 80,000 mujahideen, they created a belt of madrasas on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, and 80,000 mujahideen were recruited by the CIA and sent into Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden was once one of the poster boys of the jihad in Afghanistan. And having conquered Afghanistan, there was a sense of triumphalism in the global jihad community. The global jihad community felt their time had come, and what they had been able to achieve in Afghanistan, they could replicate all over the world, in any state of the world. And one of the prime targets of this entire global jihad community that had been nurtured in Pakistan was India. And immediately after the Afghan war, it is Ziaul Haq who decided that he would bleed India with 1,000 cuts. They had fought 4 wars against India, lost each one of them, and in 1971, they had lost half their country. When for once we turned to the Israeli ideology of hitting back and not taking it on the chin. We broke Pakistan in 2 in 13 days. I was fortunate to be a part of that war. In 13 days, we had marched on the capital city of Dhaka, 550 kilometers inside Bangladesh we had gone. We created a new nation state with the force of arms, and we marched on an enemy capital and enforced regime change. So for a time, we thought we had dealt with this threat. But it is the Afghan war which revived Pakistan. Pakistan, I'm sorry to state, they were supported massively by the CIA, and then they became the real bridgehead for global Islamic Jihad in our part of the world. Now, the point at issue is, the Taliban has now taken charge in Afghanistan. It remains to be seen whether this global Islamic Jihad bridgehead will now, as Pakistan wanted strategic depth in Afghanistan, therefore, they have now acquired, as they felt, they were feeling there was a wave of triumphalism in Pakistan when the Taliban finally, conquered Kabul, and there was that very messy exit of our American friends from Afghanistan. It was virtually a repeat of what had happened in Vietnam when there was no need to. But the simple fact is that now they felt that they have acquired that strategic depth. They can intensify their war against asymmetric war against India. But the reverse has happened, fortunately for us, fortunately for the globe. Ethnicity has asserted itself. And the Taliban, which they thought would be their puppet in Afghanistan, and it would sort of enable Pakistan to utilize the entire resources of the Taliban to further their asymmetric wars against India and wherever else they wanted to, perhaps even intervene in the Middle East with these jihadi volunteers, as had happened during the Afghan war. That whole dream seems to be coming apart at the seams because of the ethnic conflict between the Afghans and the people and the army of Pakistan. We have seen the chaos that is happening in Afghanistan now as intergroup warfare, mostly on ethnic fault lines, has overtaken that area. So the world may have gotten a reprieve, but I am more worried about the Ummah that has spread into Europe. They are technologically savvy, and it remains to be seen what will happen next there and how that will influence, the global jihad all over the world, including primarily the Middle East. The ISIS had its share of volunteers coming in from the West, from the United States, from Europe. Will the Middle East also see an infusion of volunteers from the rest of Europe? From the more technologically savvy populations of Europe, they're already leading the demonstrations against Israel in the European states. Who do you think is organizing all these massive demonstrations? In the United States, it is the Palestinian diaspora. In France, in England, in Germany, in all the other states, it is these Muslim expatriates, it is these Islamic people who came begging for asylum as refugees, and now they have gained enough traction to use democratic practices against to weaken and target these democracies. It is these people who are destabilizing, and creating a very, very dangerous foci. Not immediate danger, but unless Europe wakes up to it and takes action in the future, this could cause serious, serious problems in terms of the global jihad for which we have all come here to collaborate. I will be talking on the Middle Eastern aspect more in the final phase of today's conference, but I shall leave it for now by just saying that we need to study Abdul Allah Maududi, who was the first ideologue of the jihad. I don't think even our Israeli friends who have done marvelous work on the jihad themes in their studies, they have also focused on this man. So far, I have not seen a English translation of his book, Al-Jihad-e-Islam, which General Ziaul Haq used to carry around as a Bible and keep dishing out into all the units that he went. If we wish to understand global Islamic jihad, we have to study Abdullah Maududi. We have to study its manifestation in the Indian subcontinent and in the Middle East. The Deobandi school, the Hassan al-Banna school. You see, and then see how they are coming together. And then see in the future what the technologically savvy Muslim populations of Europe can do to further flare up this global Islamic jihad. Just like the world had to come together to face communism, deal with the ideology of communism that did not recognize horizontal straight borders. They wanted to replace it with vertical class struggle. Today, the world has to come together to face the global jihad phenomena, which also recognize international and is primarily a threat to the democratic order of things. The new form of global jihad has, thrown up the phenomena of the Amir, the autocratic Muslim leader. There is no democracy there. And in the long term, campaign in trying to counter this, we have to understand, finally I'll conclude by saying that there are three concepts in Islam: Ijtihad, Ijma, and the Hadiths. Ijtihad, is the independent doctrine of independent reasoning. Every Muslim is free to read the Quran and come to his own judgments. It's quite democratic. Ijma is the consensus of the community, is very democratic. But that is not what has prevailed. What has prevailed is the view that has come down from the Hadiths, which is making it increasingly autocratic, anti-democratic. So the democracies of the world have to unite against this autocratic phenomena, and we must see that Islam, goes towards, as it modernizes, as there is more secular education, goes towards Ijma and Ijtihad. Goes towards Ijma and Ijtihad. The more democratic concepts in Islam must prevail if we are to, in the long term, fight and put a halt to this phenomenon. I thank you all for a very patient listening. I am deeply delighted to share the forum, honored in fact, with the ambassador of Israel. A brother, they are absolutely our brothers in arms, especially in this period when we are both under attack by global Islamic jihad forces. We must increase our unity. We must increase people-to-people contacts so that we face this threat jointly. Like I said, both Israel and India, we have only one state. only one state for our religion and our people. We can't afford to lose them. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, General Sir. In such a short time, you have really painted a very vast canvas, giving us the insights into the facets from this jihad ideas germane come up and start influencing the world. The another factor on which you have really given us the caution is the tech savvy community which is coming up, taking the advantages of the democracy and the technologies from the European world and many other countries, and using the same technologies and the same democratic values to impose their own Sharia laws or other tenets onto the countries which have accepted such refugees with open arm, have tried to bring into the mainstream. Thank you so much for your views, sir. And I think the points which are brought out are very important to be discussed more during the forthcoming sessions and coming to the very appropriate conclusions. Before I give a concluding remark, I would like to ask His Excellency Ambassador if would like to add a few views before we conclude this session. Your Ambassador, sir, your time.
Yeah, no conclusion, nothing to add. I think everything was said. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you, General, for the friendship. I do agree that India and Israel are for many years standing together, but we are standing even closer now. I think that the understanding of each other's problems and the world problems is probably very similar. And this is, I think, our virtue, and this is our power. And we are working very, not everything is, of course, open to public, open information, but India and Israel are doing a lot of things together which are related to counterterrorism and current events. So I'm very thankful for our Indian brothers and sisters for, the very warm and receptive and strong support we get here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you, General, for putting up your views so illustratedly, which has laid down the foundation for the next sessions to come. Ambassador, sir, we as India stand very firmly with Israel. And if I may say so, both our names, India and Israel, stand with I, but we don't focus on I, we to make we, and we will stand together and find this menace to bring peace to this world and make it a good heritage to share for our children and grandchildren. Thank you so very much, General Sir and Ambassador Sir, for participating in this forum, and we are grateful to you. Thank you so much. Satya,
Thank you,
the forum is yours.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. As we conclude the inaugural session of our conference, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to our session chair, Commodore Professor Srikant Deshmukh, sir. I am also profoundly grateful to His Excellency Ambassador Naor Gilon for his insightful inaugural remarks. His perspectives have not only enriched our understanding, but also highlighted the critical aspects of our deliberations. Moreover, our sincere appreciation goes to Major General G.D. Bakshi for his compelling and thought-provoking presentation. His words have indeed provided a strong and inspiring start to our conference. The collective wisdom and experience shared by our distinguished speakers today have laid a strong foundation for the meaningful and constructive discussions that lie ahead. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.